Hello and welcome. Slightly delayed start. I do have to say, Danny, amazing what happens behind a live set. But this is the first session of Wigan Council's WellFest Festival. It's a festival all about mental health and social care, and I'm very privileged to be hosting a live Q&A this evening with Danny Sculthorpe. So I'm Jenny Meadows, Wigan resident, maybe better known for running 2 laps around the track. I was an 800 metre runner, and I'm absolutely delighted that Danny Sculthorpe is joining us this evening. We're very relaxed, Danny, aren't we?
Chilled out.
We're very chilled out, and we're really looking forward to obviously talking about your career. Born in Oldham, but you are an adopted Wiganer.
I am now, yeah.
And we're very proud of you, of course. But just in a nutshell, you played just under 300 professional rugby league games over such a long career. I felt like I already knew about your career, actually, but fascinating actually reading it. 8 times for England.
That's it, yeah.
Amazing. And you're here, obviously, to talk about your career as well, but also just to really open up. You're an advocate now for mental health. We can see on your top, State of Mind Sports Charity as well. And, you know, you've been really honest about, you know, finishing your career, and we'll go through your career, obviously, in kind of chronological order, which I found really, really fascinating to research. But, you know, you did suffer from depression and some mental health problems, and I think sometimes a lot of people need to kind of hear those messages to kind of overcome if they're feeling, you know, in a similar sort of situation.
Yeah, 100%, and it's something that I'm not ashamed of. It's something that happened, I dealt with it, and now I'm happier than ever. It just, circumstances through me, injuries and illness had a massive impact on my mental health, and you know, I managed to get the right coping strategies to deal with it, and I'm good now, and I'm working in the NHS as a wellbeing and lifestyle coach, so, you know, life's good.
It's amazing. And, you know, sometimes we use the kind of terminology role model, and I always think if I go into a school and, you know, kids just want to see how many gold medals you've won, I always take a bronze medal with me because actually that was my personal best. And I always say, forgive me, come on, it was a World Championships, but, you know, a bronze medal, you know, that was my gold medal. That was the best I could be. And I think you're one of those really good people where you are a role model because, you know, people can really look at you and think what you've achieved in the game. But I think you're really authentic and really relaxed and genuine. So really thank you for doing this evening. I'm sure we'll get absolute tons out of it. But if it's okay with you, can we start right at the beginning? So you're one of 3 children?
Yeah, 3. There's 3 of us, me, Lee and Paul, 3 lads.
Perfect.
Born, my mum and dad, Linda and Doug, from Oldham. I'm actually the only Oldhamer out of the family. My 2 brothers and my dad are from Burnley. My mum's from Gorton in Manchester. Okay. So I'm the only Oldhamer. Brilliant childhood, you know, never got spoilt, but never wanted anything either. We've got the right upbringing, and it's shone throughout our careers.
And all 3 of you were into your rugby league, of course. So you're the youngest of the 3.
Yeah,
so
yeah. There's me. I started playing when I was 6. Paul was 8, and now Lee's 3 years older, but he started later on because he was a footballer first.
Okay. So do you think the influence of your older brothers, you know, doing sport, and especially, you know, Paul doing rugby league, do you think that's where you kind of thought, I wanna play rugby league?
No, we both started on the same day, actually. Me and Paul. Yeah, there was a new team formed in Oldham called Royton Tigers, and I wanted to go along because I was a big lad, and I thought rugby league would be okay for us. And to be honest, my mum and dad pushed us into rugby league only because they got sick of me and Paul fighting all the time. We never got on as kids. We had a lot of aggression, and my dad thought, what better way to take that aggression out than, instead of beating yourselves up, each other up, go and beat other people up on the rugby field, but do it quite fairly. So we went to our first training session, got really stuck in, and we've loved it ever since. And it's been good for both me and Paul. And Lee played 5 professional rugby league matches at Rochdale Hornets, and you know, but Lee wasn't as dedicated as me and Paul. He had a great job in the sheet metal industry, making air conditioning units and stuff. which I later joined when I got released from Warrington. But he just loved the crack. He loved being around his mates, having that camaraderie, going out on the drink and just having the crack with his mates, and that's what it was for Lee. But me and Paul were, like I said, more dedicated, and we wanted to make a life out of it.
And it is amazing that you've managed to obviously, you know, make a life out of the sport. I guess it's everyone's dream. We've just been talking off camera before we start, and we were actually using football as an analogy. And you know, you came out with a percentage.
Yeah, I think.
We
were talking about the young kid from Man City taking his own life, and we said, you know, I think there's only about 1% of kids that sign for professional clubs actually make it into the top division. So it's really sad what happened, and hopefully a lot of people will learn from that, and especially parents who are, like we were talking about before, who are pushing the kids into to do stuff that they maybe not there for themselves. You know, they're being pushed into it. And my mum and dad were never like that. They made us make decisions. We could go to training if we wanted to, and we wanted to every single night. It weren't just a Tuesday and Thursday as kids for us. It was always a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, play on a Saturday, play on a Sunday, because we loved it that much. We were never forced into doing anything.
I think that's the important thing, isn't it? You know, if you are, you know, into sport, it's got to ultimately be you. I know my mum always tells a story. I ran for Wigan Harriers, so when I was age 8, I only trained once a week, and I think on my 8th birthday, it was a Friday evening, and that's the evening, you know, still to this day, that Wigan Harriers have a primary group section, and my mum said, "Oh, you know, what do you want? Do you want a party, or, you know, it's Wigan Harriers?" And I decided to go training, you know, so I think it's got to come from within. And I think it's great that you've just mentioned, obviously, you know, your parents and help, you know, getting you guys to make decisions for yourself. I'm about to be a parent, scary as it seems. And, you know, when I think, what do I want for my child? You know, a lot of people saying, "Oh, you're going to have a budding athlete, etc." And you know, I look back and I think, I just actually want them just to be really happy.
Yeah.
And actually half of me thinks, oh, I really hope that they're not an athlete, actually, because it's a tough existence doing sport, and, you know, you've got so much ownership, and you're obviously open to critics and things like that, which we'll obviously come to. But yeah, really nice that you had your brother to kind of go through. So you started your career as an academy player at Leeds.
Yeah.
Was that the dream when you kind of signed on the dotted line, or?
It was, yeah. There was 2 teams in for me. There was Leeds and Warrington. I was lucky enough that I'd just captained England schoolboys, and I captained England.
Let's go back. You captained England schoolboys. How amazing is that?
Yeah, it's the biggest achievement you can have as a young kid, as an amateur player, before you sign professional. And I was lucky enough to do that, but I was also very lucky that I followed my brother in doing it, because we are the only 2 brothers ever to do this on consecutive tours to France.
Oh wow!
So Paul had captained them in about 93, and I captained them in 95, something like that. And then I came back off that tour, and I signed for Leeds as a young kid, and I remember getting a really good contract. You know, I went on the YTS system. But unfortunately, just before I moved to Leeds and lived with a great family, in the Campbell family in Leeds, before I moved to Leeds, I had 5 games left for my team, Royton Tigers again. I went back to Royton Tigers after playing for Waterhead throughout my career. So I was playing the under-16s, I had 5 games left, and we were playing a team called Eccles from Salford. The coach at the time said, "Danny, you've signed pro. The Eccles are not a great team. We'll put you on the bench. If we need you, we'll put you on." I said, "Oh, okay." But I was following up and down, wanted to get on. And then last 15 minutes, I think we were drawing. He said, "Right, Danny, you can go on for the last 15. Anyhow, first time I took the ball in, I dislocated my kneecap. My kneecap came out, and it stayed out of my leg, and I couldn't get it back in. I ended up calling an ambulance.
It's not for faint-hearted rugby league, is it?
No, it's certainly not. Ended up ringing an ambulance, and by the time I'd got to Hope Hospital, the vibrations of the road had put halfway back in. Anyhow, the doctor just came along, flicked it back in, and all the pain went. But my God, it was a real tough time, because of that injury. It brought on type 1 diabetes. It stopped my pancreas from working. The shock of the injury brought on type 1 diabetes, and now I'm an insulin-dependent diabetic. And I went over to Leeds as a young kid, but really struggled with my weight, and I ended up getting released from Leeds within 12 months.
you know, what you've just captured there in that couple of minutes has really just been the pattern of your career. And, you know, sometimes when I go in schools, a lot of teachers, you know, the buzzword at the moment is resilience. And I think you've had to have bags of that throughout your career. Obviously had the talent, obviously had the mindset and the support and the discipline, which obviously you need that, but you need a little bit of luck. And I don't actually think you've had that much luck in your career.
No.
You've had to really be resilient and really dig deep. So straight away having to adapt your life, you know, from having that professional contract and then obviously contracting the type 1 diabetes, having to, you know, obviously change everything. You've just showed me on your phone, you know, you need to keep your phone on during this live
so
just
I can
to
test my blood on the
check your levels. But, you know, I know sometimes people say, oh, you know, if these things don't kill you, they make you stronger. And it's kind of a cheesy comment. You kind of think, how strong do I need to be? How many barriers do I need to overcome? So when you got released from Leeds, what was, like, how did that happen? Is that just your contract finished on a certain date and it wasn't renewed and you knew that? Or how did that conversation go?
What happened was I put on a lot of weight. I got obsessed with eating a lot of carbohydrates because of my blood sugars. I had no one to look up to in the sport. There was no other type 1 diabetics in the sport, so I had no one to look up to and take advice from. So I ended up eating a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of potatoes, a lot of pasta and that, because I was scared and embarrassed of letting people see my blood sugars drop. I didn't want to go hypo before, during and after training with a new family I was living with. I ended up putting a lot of weight on. I went up to about 19 stone as a 16, 17-year-old kid, and that wasn't good enough, you know. But I didn't know any better. I didn't know any other ways of dealing with my blood sugars. Leeds got me road running. Because I was road running at 19 stone, I ended up getting shin splints, which put me off training for longer. And then I ended up, it wasn't released, I got transferred to Warrington Wolves to go to and play with my brother, and it was part of the Yestin Harris deal.
I've got that down, yeah. And it was a big deal that at the time.
It was.
How did you feel being part of another player's deal? Did you feel like a pawn in the game, or like, not obviously, you know, such a role model, Yestin Harris, one of the biggest transfers and prices ever.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard that there's actually a value put on you as a player. Is that hard to cope with?
To be honest, I don't think there was. I was valued at anything. It was just a way of Leeds getting rid of me. So I ended up going to Warrington, and at the time, Yestin and Warrington were having a bit of fallouts with each other. You know, Yestin wanted to go to a bigger club where he could win trophies, and Warrington ended up putting on the transfer market at £1.35 million, and which the biggest transfer at the time was something like 400,000.
Oh, wow.
So there was no way they were going to get him. So I ended up going to Leeds as part of the deal, and Leeds paid Warrington 350 grand plus me. So I ended up being the first £1 million player, if you think about it.
I like that.
So I ended up going over to Warrington, went back living with my mum and dad. But unfortunately, again, under Darryl van der Velde, I really struggled with my fitness. Not that I didn't want to train and stuff, but I was still really struggling to come to terms with being diabetic and being this professional sportsman, and I really, really struggled. And again, within 12 months, I got released from my contract, and I thought that was it. My rugby league career's over. Really
tough times, aren't they? What kept you going? What did you have belief in yourself, or did you have a mentor? Could you speak to parents, brother? Was there anyone in the sport you could talk to, or was it just that self-drive that got you through those times?
It wasn't so much I had a mentor. It's just that we were a real close family. My two brothers are my best mates. My mum and dad, you know, are still really, really close with them. It was just, I don't know, I just decided when I left Warrington, I thought my career was over. I probably did 3 months of bumming around doing nothing until my dad said, listen, you've got to get a job or else you're out of here. He was one of them, you know, you can't sponge off us for the rest of your life. So I ended up getting a job as a plasterer's labourer, which is probably the hardest job I've ever had. I was mixing plaster and dry lining for 3 plasterers in a day, and mixing in baths and stuff like that. And then it come to roost that, you know, I need to be playing rugby. This is not set out for me. So I ended up doing this job for quite a bit, and then I got a job with my eldest brother, Lee, a place called KG Jilks, which is a sheet metal shop that fit air conditioning units in bakeries and stuff like that. And it was my job to be the labourer, so I was doing a lot of heavy lifting, carrying metal around. I worked really, really hard, but it was also my job as a labourer to go to for the breakfast in the morning. And it was hard going in ordering sausage, bacon and egg sandwiches when I've got a tub of grapefruit, because I needed to get my diet back on the right terms. My job was also to go to the chippy at dinner. These guys were all older guys. They weren't that bothered of what they ate. So I was going ordering sausage, bacon and egg in the morning, going ordering fish and chips in the afternoon, and I had a bowl of grapefruit and a salad back at the shop. But I knew that if I wanted to be a professional rugby league player, I knew that I needed to do that. So that's what I did. I worked really hard in my job, and then I got offered to go to Rochdale Hornets, and it was off an old school teacher of our Lee's, a guy called Ian McCorkadale, who probably gave my rugby league career the kickstart that it needed.
Oh, well, sometimes you just need, that's the only bit of luck you've had.
Yeah.
I said you had none. That's the kind of little bit of kickstart that you actually needed in someone at that time. But I think sometimes when you do the hard yards and you actually see a dose of reality, you know, it really does make you think again. You know, I can think when I've been injured and things like that, it's quite different in a sport like athletics when you're on your own. So you don't kind of go and see your teammates every day. You know, you're responsible for doing your training every day, and if you don't do it, no one knows, but you know. Yeah. So it really sounds to me like you really found yourself, and you know, good for you to have that discipline to do that.
Yeah.
So back at Rochdale Hornets, how did it feel to be? Would you have been professional, or was it semi-professional?
It was semi-pro, so it was like two nights a week, play on a Sunday if you're in the first team. But for me, I would train 2 nights a week, and then when I first joined, I was playing in the under-19s. It used to be the academy, the under-19s, which I wish rugby league had now, but unfortunately for the kids, they don't. I ended up playing in the academy team for about 2 weeks. This was after a good pre-season where I trained really hard. They put me into the academy, and you know, I knew I was a good player, but when I was fit as well, I was even better. And I played 2 games in the academy, then I got moved to the reserve team. But instead of just playing in the reserve team, I played in the academy and the reserve, so I was playing 2 games a week.
So you got really fit.
Yeah, I got really fit. I'm one of them players who got fit through playing, not through training.
Yeah.
So the more we played, the fitter I got. And then within about 6 weeks, I was playing academy on a Saturday, I was playing reserves on a Thursday, and I was playing first team on a Sunday. And I did this for about 6 months until eventually I was just playing first team. Amazing.
And I think it's really interesting what you said about, it's that transition, isn't it? You know, from, you know, having that kind of academy structure and having under-19s, etc. You know, you can have all the talent in the world, but making that transition from being like a good age group player to that senior professional, it's where a lot of people drop off, isn't it? So again, I think you know, you've had to dig deep and kind of find your own way, which, you know, all credit to you, because I know a lot of people can you think of any of your counterparts who you started off with who maybe had the talent but they didn't have the support or the coping skills?
Yeah, loads. There's loads out there. I was just lucky that I had a real close family, and I also had, you know, an MBE and 2-time Man of Steel as a brother as well, which helped me massively.
Pretty handy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like any pressure to have a brother who's captain of Great Britain, Man of Steel, etc., and you're trying to find your way in the sport? Was that pressure?
I get asked this all the time, and 100% I can say no.
Amazing.
Because I just looked up to him.
Yeah.
He was someone that I'd tried emulated. You know, every night off that we had as kids, he'd be in the gym at Waterhead doing the weights and stuff with a guy called Ken Wilson, and that's where my work ethic followed on the back of that, because I knew, you know, what a great player he was, and I just wanted to be like him.
Yeah, and I think seeing that work ethic as well is so good. I remember as a youngster, you know, being at Robin Park the First, as I always call it, you know, seeing Sean Edwards, and, you know, he'd just be there when the rest of the team weren't there, you know, doing sprints training, just the ultimate professional. And yes, obviously he had talent, but I think he was just a good reader of the game and just had so much work ethic, and that ultimately made him what it was, wasn't it?
He was a rugby player 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just, you know, the easy bit is the training. I always said I'm a PT now for the trust at North West Boroughs Healthcare, and I always said to people when I'm training them, this is the easy hour.
Yeah.
The hard 23 hours is when you're at home, when you're going into the fridge, can you make a right decision on what you
without
eat
the support.
Yeah.
So your career finally kicked off 2001, December 2001. You got signed by Wigan.
Yeah.
Was that your kind of, you know, real? You actually thought, I'm back in the game now. I'm a professional. I'm with one of the world's best clubs. Was that a defining moment for you?
Yeah, it was massive for me. You know, I'd like I said, I'd lost a lot of weight and I got myself really fit. I think I'd been put in for the Northern Ford Premiership, which is the Championship Player of the Year 2 years running. I played about 80 consecutive games for Rochdale. Got the Player of the Year, and then Wigan paid Rochdale on it 70 grand for me, which at the time probably saved the club. And I was very close with the chairman, a guy called Ray Taylor, who's unfortunately died now, and get emotional talking about it was just brilliant to give him something back.
Yeah.
He really looked after me at Rochdale, and for me to be able to do that for him was fantastic. And you know, I get emotional, but I'm not bothered. I ended up going to Wigan, and I played, you know, 5 years at Wigan.
Yeah.
In 2001 I signed for him. I was lucky enough in my time at Wigan to play with some outstanding players. Terry Newton, God bless him, Terry O'Connor, Quentin Ponga, Craig Smith, Dave Ferner, Brett Dallas. The list goes on. Adrian Lamb, the now coach of Wigan, and also probably the best of them all was Andrew Farrell, Owen's dad, who was just one of them guys who you turned up to training to watch. You just watched him, you're just in awe of him. You just thought, you are so good because of what you put in every single day. So we would train at 9 a.m. He'd have been in from 7 a.m. He'd have done a 6-mile run on the treadmill. He'd have done all his prehab. He'd have done all his stretches. He'd have done all his TheraBand stuff, all warming up, ready for the weight session. Some players were turning up at 5 to 9, just walking in and doing the weights, just going through the motions. But you can see why he was top for so long. He was just unbelievable.
Do you know, when you think about a player like that, what do you think makes them tick? What do you think goes through the psyche? Are they just absolutely dedicated to the cause, like almost a perfectionist? They can't see it any other way. And can they switch off? Because, you know, I kind of have a perfectionist tendency, which I ultimately think gets me where I am.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily always enjoy the journey. I make things quite hard for me. Would you say someone like Andy Farrell enjoyed what he did? Could he switch off from it?
I think he enjoyed it. I don't think Faz and Kevin Sinfield, he's another one. I don't think they never switched off. Like my brother, who was, you know, up there, if not better than them two, personally, but it's because he's my brother. Paul could switch off. Paul could have a crack. He could have a night out and stuff like that. And Faz could to a certain degree, but not. Kevin Sinfield were just 24/7 rugby league, and you know, again, all three MBEs and legends in the sport who have done great and have got a good life after rugby now as well. So yeah, it's you've got to be there. You've got to be dedicated, but you've also got to have a life as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's really important.
I always think there's one bit of advice I would try and give somebody who was younger than me is try to enjoy the journey a little bit more. You can.
That's the advice you'd give to your younger self.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've always had a good work ethic, but sometimes it's come at a consequence where it's hard to switch off. And I look at people who can switch off, and I think that's amazing. But I think it is a skill that comes, isn't it? Yeah. So you did have those 5 years at Wigan. I got a quote, and forgive me if I'm wrong. You'd not been at Wigan very long, and you actually got an injury during a weight session.
Yeah.
And you actually ended up going back to to Rochdale Hornets for 4 weeks. And the coach, Wigan coach at the time, was Stuart Raper, who I remember. Yeah. And he actually said, you know, Danny's fit. He's back now. He's fit. He's been great, you know, at Rochdale. And obviously you've got a huge affinity with that club. And like you say, you know, Ray really helping you. But he said, he's back now. He's fit. But we've got nowhere to play him. Because you were in that team with so many legends at the time. Yeah. How do you cope with something like that where you're fit, you're ready, but you're on the bench or there's no position for you at that time?
I was fit, but I wasn't match fit. Right. So I knew that I needed to play some games before I played for Wigan first team. So I went back to Rochdale. I played 3 games for them. Stuart Raper came watching me in the last one. And then on the 8th of September, I think it was 2002, I made my Wigan debut on my birthday.
23rd birthday.
23rd birthday.
Yeah, done research.
In a Wigan St Helens derby.
Against your brother.
Against my brother.
Against your brother.
And we absolutely smashed it.
What's the conversation like? Obviously, did you live in different houses at the time?
We lived in different houses, but the night before, on the 7th of September, we went to a place called the Crimble Restaurant in Rochdale. We went for a meal. But Stuart Raper told me that I wasn't allowed to tell any of my family that I was playing, that I was 18th man. So
this is good gossip. I like this.
I told
This is what
Paul
we want to know.
I was 18th man. So Paul picked me up because we're both living in Oldham in separate houses. I was still living with my mum and dad. Paul had got his own place. He picked me up in a Audi TT, I think it were. Drove me to DW Stadium. I think it was a JJB at the time. And I just said, have a good game, lad. He went, all right, no problem. You'll be playing soon. And he ended up. About an hour later, he saw my name on the team sheet.
And you were starting? You were actually starting?
No, I was on the bench.
You were on the bench
I was on the bench, and I only came on for the last 20 minutes. And you were talking about the big step up from the academy to the reserves to the first team was big. But when you go from the Championship to Super League, it's no harder. It's no more physical. It's just 100 times quicker. Really? And it was frightening. I'm glad I only played the last 20 minutes.
Oh, really? Yeah. So when you're sat on the bench and you know there's a chance you're going to come on, are you waiting for that opportunity, or is part of you a little bit nervous and anxious, thinking, I've got to go out there? What's your mind at that
I'm definitely
time?
Nervous. I was always really bad with my nerves. Like I was saying before, I was physically sick before every game, which is not good because you lose it. You're using nervous energy, but I'm also putting other players on edge as well. Listening to me spewing up in the toilets. So I have got them nerves, but I've not got them nerves thinking, oh, don't put me on. I don't want to get on. As soon as I sat on that bench, I wanted to get on. If I was on the bench from the start of a game, I couldn't sit down. I was warming up all the time because I knew that my time would come, but I was too nervous to sit down and relax.
Do you know, it's really interesting because I think when you see a professional, you know, sports person, no matter what sport it is, you just presume they're in control, they look great. You know, I always use the example of Usain Bolt. You know, he's doing obviously, you know, everything that he does to the camera, brushing his hair and everything. Yeah. He's petrified. Of course he is, because all he can do is live up to expectations.
Everyone's watching him.
Everyone's watching him, and it's all about him. And he can never almost overachieve because people expect it of him. Were any other players like you? Would anybody else be, you know, being sick before a match, or
there'd be a couple of us, but not loads.
But it's very difficult for you, like as an individual, you know, nobody, I can kind of hide away, and if I'm a little bit nervous, if I need to be sick or anything, you can do it on your own. But obviously, like you say, you don't want to put your teammates off, but you've got to do what's necessary for you. So
I couldn't hold it in.
Yeah.
But then Stuart Raper was absolutely brilliant with me, and he got me into deep breathing techniques, which helped me with my anxiety before games.
Amazing.
Yeah, and you know, I do talks for State of Mind all the time, and we talk about, you know, I take it everyone on this who's watching this programme will have had a bath. Yeah, I take it you've had a bath in your life, one or two. So when you get in a bath, not only does it slow down your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, but deep breathing does exactly the same. So Stuart Raper got me into the deep breathing techniques, which helped me with my nerves before a game, helped me massively.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, what sort of year would that have been?
2002, 2003, when I was first really starting to to find my feet and playing in big games.
And is that something that he just saw in you? And
He probably heard me as well, you know. Yeah.
But it's great, you know, if somebody actually sees someone and they can personally, you know, not judge them. And you know, there was a terrible comment from one of the football managers, wasn't there, the other day? Said, you know, the goalie messed up, and he said, you know, he needs to man up. And I just got so annoyed at that.
I hear that.
Yeah, it's just outdated kind of gender stereotypical language.
And
what does
that's
man
exactly
up
what
mean?
State of mind are trying to break down people. Things like that, grow a pair, stop being soft, all that. It's a load of rubbish. I could swear, but I won't because we're going live on Facebook now. But yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think when somebody understands, you know, you as a person and isn't judgmental, that obviously really gets the best out of you as a player.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after Wigan?
Well, during my time at Wigan, I was lucky enough to play for Lancashire in 2004 at Odsal Stadium in a Lancashire v Yorkshire War of the Roses, they called it.
I remember.
Which was a
that
massive
doesn't happen
achievement.
anymore.
No,
anyway, that was great. That was a great.
And a runner actually brought the ball. Well, she was not known for running. Nell McAndrew.
Oh yeah. She does a lot of marathons. Yeah.
So she brought the ball onto the pitch. I remember that because she was quite nice. So I played for Lancashire, and I was also lucky enough to play in the 2004 Challenge Cup final at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff in front of 80,000 people.
Amazing.
In a Wigan versus St Helens derby. Now, Wigan and St Helens hate each other. The towns, the fans, the players, the coaches. It was awesome. But for me, what made it even more special, I was playing for Wigan and my brother was captain of St Helens.
Oh wow!
So for my mum and dad, this were the first time two brothers had ever done this. So my mum and dad were the first two people ever to be sat there a minute to kick off, knowing they were going to win. How good was it for them?
That's amazing.
And I remember going in the bar after the game, and my mum and dad were there. And I remember, unfortunately, St Helens beat us 32-16. And I remember mum and dad saying, "Listen, we're not going to celebrate. You've lost. We're just going to go for a meal and then we're going to go back to the hotel and just have an early night." I said, "No, you're not. You're going back to Paul's hotel. You're going to celebrate. It's the first time your son's picked up the Challenge Cup. You go and celebrate with them." And that's exactly what they did. So it was just, you know, 80,000 people. The atmosphere was absolutely electric. It was hard to hear your teammate on a field. It was that frightening.
One thing I've always wanted to ask someone who plays team sports, you know, I obviously do athletics. There's 8 people on a track. My event's less than 2 minutes. Can just hear the buzz of the crowd, can hear the stadium announcer, and that's it. You're on a pitch and you must be able to hear the crowd. You must be able to hear the, you know, opposition crowd, and they're going to shout stuff at you, aren't they? They're going to sledge you. They're going to kind of troll you. You hear something, you make a mistake in a game, you know, and you might already be thinking, you know, getting really frustrated at yourself. And then you hear the crowd also pick up. How do you, firstly, not get emotional about it? Either, you know, really emotional as in you want to cry about it, you know, or keep your kind of cool and frustration and then try to put it away and then focus on the rest of the game. Like, do you learn those skills as you play, and how hard is it to cope with that? Someone actually saying things to you.
To be honest, I didn't find it really hard. I thought if I'm getting slagged off by an opposition set of fans, then it's more of a compliment. When you're trying to slag you off and put you off your game, I find it as a compliment. I always had a good rapport with the St Helens crowd, and people used to slag me off all the time, and it never made me get more frustrated because I couldn't get any angrier than what I was anyway, because I was a horrible player. I used to love, you know, all the rough stuff, and I loved giving people a crack anyway, so I didn't really need anything like that for it to rile me. So people slagging me off, it didn't really bother me. Unfortunately for me, when social media started, I started looking at trolls on the internet and stuff.
It's
and that's
a lot harder
that's
now,
more damaging
isn't it?
when you've not got that adrenaline going through your body. You can't laugh it off, and you're sat with a phone or a laptop, and you're looking, or an iPad, and you're looking at people slagging you off. That's what I can't cope with, because a lot of these people are the keyboard warriors. They're not worth it, but it still gets to you. It's
really tough, isn't it? And we were talking, you know, before we, you know, went live, you know, how tough it is for young people now. You know, a lot of people live the life on social media. I can think of some young athletes and, you know, they've not got 20 likes within 5 minutes. They're deleting a post, and it's all about that kind of recognition. I can always remember, you know, again, social media only kind of came out towards the end of my career. And, you know, you might have 100 comments and 99 are positive, but that one negative one would be the only one.
And that's what that's what people have got to change around, because we always focus on the negatives. When you've got loads and loads of positives, everyone focuses on the negatives, and that's what people in general, not just in sport, people in general have got to change.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we'll come on to state of mind soon as well, because, you know, that's something that you're kind of talking about at schools and universities and clubs, which I think is so, so important. So after Wigan, we're still only on 2006, we've got a long way to go, you know, you had a loan spell at Castle Tigers before you joined Wakefield Trinity Wildcats and then Huddersfield. So you play for a lot of clubs. How do you, sometimes if you're playing, you go to a club and, you know, you've been somewhere, I'm probably being quite presumptuous saying this, you know, you've got really good facilities at Wigan Warriors or something, and then, you know, the next minute, I know obviously you love Rochdale and they've been a big part of you, but obviously, you know, you're back at a championship club and you're kind of trying to find your way again. When there's a move that you don't want and it's forced, like how does that, you know, again, it's a worth and a value. How do you just set your mind to that?
That was a really tough one, leaving Wigan. I just played for England 8 times and captained England twice on a tour of South Africa with the likes of Rob Burrow, Danny Maguire, players like that and that calibre. So for me to leave Wigan was very tough, and a lot of fans at Wigan said there's no way you should be leaving Wigan.
I've read a lot about that.
But Ian Millward came into Wigan and he coached my brother at St Helens. I don't know if they'd have a bit of a fallout, and he was taking it out on me, because I certainly shouldn't be leaving Wigan for the players that were going to take my position. There was no way that should have happened. Anyhow, it happened to be a blessing in disguise, really, because I ended up going to Castleford. And I thought at first, I don't want to leave Wigan and go to Castleford at Weldon Road. It's an old ground. The facilities are not the same. But Castleford, absolutely brilliant. I absolutely love my time at Cass. And the only reason I left Castleford is because in 2006 in Super League, there used to be like it used to be a franchise system. In 2006, it was the first time in Super League and Championship there was promotion and relegation. The team that finished bottom of Super League should have been relegated, but that was a new team from France called the Catalan Dragons. They had a 3-year exemption from relegation, so the team that finished second to the bottom got sent down instead. And unfortunately, we lost our last game of the season. It was between us and Wakefield, Cass and Wakefield, who got sent down, and Wakefield beat us, so we got sent down into the Championship. And I had a young son and Ellie, my eldest daughter, and I didn't want to go into the Championship with less money. I wanted to stay in Super League, carry on my rugby league career and earn a decent living for them. So I ended up leaving Castleford, a club that I absolutely loved and I didn't want to move, and I ended up going to Wakefield, the club that had just sent us down.
That was tough.
Yeah, so I ended up playing I signed a 3-year deal at Wakefield. I liked it at first, but I didn't really have a good relationship with John Keir. He treated us like school kids, to be honest. It wasn't a good atmosphere. I ended up playing 2 full seasons, and in the 3rd year, in the 6th game, we ended up playing London Broncos away, and we got beat down at Harlequins at the Stoop, and we got beat. So a few of us decided to have a few beers on the back of the bus. So we had a few beers, we got back to Wakefield, John Keir pulled us together, he said, "Boys, there's a booze ban on, what you doing?" So he told us there was a booze ban after we'd been drinking. So it really set us up, really. He was a horrible man. I really didn't get on with him. So we had a meeting the next day, we had a swim and then we had a meeting, and he came into the meeting and he went straight at me. He went, "You've thieved 6 bottles of beer off the back of the bus." I said, "What are you on about?" He says, "Them beers, that you had to pay for them." I said, "Have you asked the driver who's paid for them?" He went, "No." I said, "Well, there was only me that did." So actually I paid him 20 quid. They were £3 a bottle, so I gave him a £2 tip. And I said, I can't tell you what I said to him, but we had a massive fallout in front of all the players and ended up going on loan to Huddersfield, which, again, under Nathan Brown and Paul Anderson, was the best move I've ever done. And them 6 bottles of Budweiser that I had on the back of the bus were the six best Bud I've ever had. because I hated Wakefield, and then I got to Huddersfield and absolutely loved it. We had a great team, we had 2 great coaches. We got to Wembley in the Challenge Cup. Unfortunately, I was cup tied because I'd already played for Wakefield the year before. But Nathan Brown took me to Wembley to be part of the squad. We got to the semi-final of the playoffs in the Super League and finished 3rd in the league. So it was a great year. But when I joined Huddersfield, they'd already spent the salary cap up for the following year. So that's a reason why I left Cast, but that's a reason why I left Huddersfield as well. And people said, God, did they all get rid of you? And it was just the circumstances that didn't quite fit. So I couldn't sign for Huddersfield because they'd spent up to 1.8 million, which is a salary cap in rugby league. And I ended up signing a 4-year deal at Bradford. And that's when things took a bit of a turn for the worse.
So, you've talked about now your dad, and obviously you're married to Natalie. Yeah. How did she cope with, your moves? They were quite frequent during that time, and obviously it'd be great to have a settled environment for the kids, and know you've got a steady income and things like that. I think a lot of people think, professional rugby player, it's amazing, but it's turbulent. Yeah. It's stressful for you guys. Absolutely,
and to be honest, contracts in rugby league then didn't mean anything. The clubs were firing players off left, right, and centre, and it was very hard. But Natalie's really strong. She's probably the strongest one in our family, and she was amazing for me when we went through all the stuff at Bradford. So I was just a lucky man. And when I moved to Castleford from Wigan, Ian Millward rang me from Manchester Airport to tell me I was leaving, and then jumped on a plane, so I couldn't even have a conversation with him. He didn't even meet me face to face. He rang me up from Manchester Airport. Danny, we're getting rid of you. You're going on loan. Then my agent ended up speaking to Castleford, and this was 2 weeks before we got married.
Oh gosh.
So I had no club 2 weeks before we got married.
Really, really tough. Again, it's interesting why he did that. Maybe, he actually was dreading it, and that was just the only way he could do it. I've had plenty of rejection. I remember being on, world-class lottery funding, and, then having a letter basically, saying whatever, you've not hit the grade, and whatever career you have back with your club, we wish you well. And it's how you deal with those things, isn't it? You either, my kind of mindset was, I'll show you, and luckily I did, or some people could just fall by the wayside. And when you've been a professional sports person, it's your identity as well, isn't it? That's really tough. Were you able to, 2 weeks before your wedding, were you able to put that aside and enjoy the day and think you can come back from it, or were you worried for your family?
I was worried, but I also had confidence in my ability. I knew that this was just personal. This was nothing to do with my ability.
Yeah.
It was tough, but I knew that I could still do a job for a club in Super League.
So Bradford,
yeah.
It was. I've actually got a quote, and I thought I don't actually want to say the sentence this way, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to say the sentence this way. So. Wikipedia, you can blame for this. It said, joined Bradford, who didn't actually make a single appearance for the club.
No.
Wow. Well, obviously, we talked about your diabetes earlier, and then a training accident as well.
Yeah.
So, can you talk us through
Certainly
that?
Can. Yeah, I do it most days anyhow with the work I do with State of Mind, but it's pretty tough, and I might get emotional talking about it. But like I said, I'm not bothered. Signed for Bradford. I think it was October 2010, something like that, or was it 2009? I signed for Bradford, and then I started pre-season a few weeks later because Natalie was in hospital with gallstones, and they couldn't find. She's ended up being in hospital for about 3 months, and I ended up starting pre-season a little bit later.
So you're full-time dad at home during that
with
time as well?
With a young son and my eldest daughter Ellie. So I ended up starting pre-season pretty late at Bradford, mid-November. I think we'd done a couple of weeks into pre-season. I remember it being a Monday. We'd had a field session in the morning. Pre-season, as you know, is absolutely disgusting. It's the worst 3 months. You're getting flogged every day. It's just getting beasted in the gym, getting flogged on the field.
And I've spent some time when I was injured in 2012, not the ideal year to be injured, with Wigan Warriors, and I've got so much more respect from seeing those training sessions. It's not Premier League football. Go in for a couple of hours, it is a slog.
It's horrible. I remember being at Wigan, and we used to train at Christopher Park, and there used to be us and then at Wigan Athletic, and we'd be getting pitch lamps and stuff, and they were playing kick tennis with a football, and they're getting paid 20 times more than us, and we're thinking, oh, we're in the wrong sport here. So I started pre-season later. It was a Monday. We'd had a flogging on the field, we'd had our dinner, and then at 1 p.m. we started a legs weight session, and I'd done a few exercises, different legs exercises, and then it was my turn to do some squatting. I did a squat and I prolapsed a disc in the bottom of my spine, bit L3-4, which is quite low down in your back. And
did you just know straight away?
I got a feeling down my leg straight away. Wasn't 100% sure, but I knew something wasn't right. And a lot of people, when you talk about a prolapsed disc, call it a slip disc, when really your disc doesn't move. It's not a slip disc. Your disc doesn't come out of place. What happens when you prolapse a disc is that inside every disc inside your spine is a soft toothpaste substance. That got squeezed out. When it comes outside the disc and forms around it, it sets rock hard straight away, and it was trapping the sciatic nerve that went down my right leg. I had no back pain at all. It was all sciatic in my bum, my quad, my calf and into my foot, which meant 2 weeks later I went in for surgery. I had the disc shaved. It released the sciatic nerve. I woke up in recovery and all the sciatic pain had gone. All I could think to myself was, yes, I'm going to be back playing with my 30 best mates before I know it. And my teammates were my best mates, because I spent more time with them than I did with my wife and kids, to be fair. The day after the operation, the surgeon came to see me on the ward. He said, Danny, everything's gone great with your surgery. You can go home today. So I'd had major spinal surgery and I was home within 24 hours. Things couldn't get any better. Unfortunately for me, about 2 weeks down the line, I started getting these unbelievable, unbearable pains in the bottom of my back. These pains now I cannot even talk about now how bad they were. It was frightening. I couldn't get out of bed. I was being sick everywhere. I phoned the surgeon up and I told him, he said, Danny, with you having diabetes is higher risk of infection. You need to come down and see me straight away. I phoned my dad. I was living in Wigan at the time. I phoned my dad, who lived in Oldham, to come and pick me up in Billinge in Wigan, and he took me to the Alexander Hospital in Cheadle in Manchester. I walked through the surgeon's door, and I remember the surgeon just lifting his head, looking at me and just shaking his head, saying, mate, I don't like the look of you. He says, the pain you're in, your sickness, but your skin's a funny colour as well. What I need you to do now, straight away, I'm going to put you on this wheelchair, I'm going to take you for a blood test and take you for an emergency MRI scan. So he wheeled me through for a blood test, had that done, went through for an MRI, had that done, went back to his office and waited in his office for 3 hours for the results. The results came back to show that I'd picked up osteomyelitis, which is a bone-eating infection, but I'd also caught sepsis as well, which is an infection that kills people. Obviously, it didn't kill me, but what it nearly did. What it did do, though, it meant me going straight from his office. I didn't even have a chance to go home to see my wife and my kids. I went straight to a ward and I was there for 3 months. They put me on the strongest painkillers you can be on, so I was drinking Oromorph like it was water, liquid morphine. They put me on Oxycontin and Oxynorm, a quick-acting and slow-acting morphine-based drug. I was on 100 microgram fentanyl patches, which is the closest thing to heroin, and I was having shots of ketamine every 4 hours. All strong opiate drugs that people get addicted to. And I was on massive amounts of these drugs for nearly 9 months. Gosh. And the withdrawal and the weaning off and the coming off all them drugs was just as bad as the actual injury. It was absolutely horrendous. After being in hospital a week, they fitted a tube in my chest called a Hickman line, which is a small thin plastic tube that used to hang down at the front here. It went through my chest and it connected to my heart. And what they used to do was hook up this tube to a drip, so I'd get my antibiotics, real strong antibiotics, through the tube to my heart. Then my heart would flush it around my body, then it'd get to my spine quicker than if they did it through a cannula in my hand or through tablet form. After being in hospital a month, they did another MRI scan to compare it with the one that I'd had previously. And unfortunately for me, it was showing more and more damage to the bottom of my spine. I remember the surgeon coming over to me and saying, Danny, unfortunately, mate, I've got to do further surgery, but I don't know what I've got to do yet fully until I take you down into theatre and open you up. So when the anaesthetists were knocking me out, I didn't have a clue what I was going to wake up to. I woke up in recovery after surgery, and I remember just lifting my head and being a bit groggy and out of it with all the drugs when you've been knocked out. I remember looking up to him and seeing him and just said to him, Doc, what have you done? Please give me some good news, mate. I'm 30 years of age. I'm hitting my peak. I'm playing some good rugby. I said, but most of all, I've got 2 young kids and a wife that I need to look after. He turned around to me, he said, Danny, unfortunately, mate, I can't give you any good news. He said, the damage this infection has done is so bad. I've had to remove the disc at the L3-4 level completely, and I've had to take the bottom part of your spine away and fuse your back with metal cages, rods and screws. When I came out of hospital for the next 6 months, I was having nurses coming to my house every day for 3 times a day for 6 months to give me the drugs, the antibiotics, the painkillers. But I'd gone from being this professional rugby league player who's trained 2-3 times a day to being able to just about do this. I used to get out of my bed in the morning, and with all the effort that I had in my body, I would get out of my bed and just about make it to my couch. At night, I used to get off my couch and just about make it to my bed. I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't make it to the toilet. I was weeing in bottles and pans. My wife was to have to empty them for me. I couldn't do any school runs with my kids. I couldn't help my wife at home, cook, clean. I couldn't go to rugby with Louis. I couldn't go dancing with Ellie. All the things that probably everyone in this room and everyone watching would take for granted, I couldn't do. And then I got a phone call off Bradford, my club, my new club. Instead of them paying me medical bills, putting me through physio, making sure I had some sort of quality of life, even if I couldn't play rugby again, Bradford did none of that. What Bradford rang me up to tell me was that they'd ripped up my contract. Which meant I lost my job, I lost my career, and we lost our family house. And that's when the depression started.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got every right to be in that frame of mind at that point. You know, I'm embarrassed to tell you that, you know, the major injuries I had was a neural hamstring, and and I needed a little bit of a shave, like my bursa, to be removed in my ankle, and I felt my world had ended. It goes back to, it goes beyond identity. So when I was injured and I missed the 2012 Olympic Games, you know, I remember being really upset and speaking to my brother, who's not sporty at all. And I actually said, if I don't get up in the morning, I mean, I could do stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not talking about only trying to get to my couch. I remember saying to my brother, oh, if I'm not a runner, what am I? And then he reminded me, and it actually hit home, because it was kind of my brother who's not even to sport, and he was kind of like, well, you're a sister, you're a wife, you're a daughter. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, all I do is run around a track. You know, 2 laps of a track, I can do that. But that is absolutely nothing compared to having, you know, kids obviously relying on you, losing the family home and things like that. Natalie's strong, isn't she? Yeah,
she's strong. And you say about comparing your injuries to mine, it's your injuries are your injuries, so it does mean something to you. You know, mine are mine. It's doesn't. There's no competition who can have the biggest injuries or the worst careers or anything like that. But
hands down.
Yeah.
But where did Natalie get her strength from? Who did Natalie talk to?
Probably a sister and a sister-in-law, Ryan's wife, a brother's wife, probably a mum. A lot of people. Paul's wife, Lindsay, my mum. She had a lot of people to talk to. She's really liked. She's got a lot of friends, so she used them. Do
you think you two were completely honest with each other, or do you think you protected each other a little bit from exactly how you were feeling?
Well, I did at first, when the depression started, I did the typical bloke thing because of that stigma. Yeah. I started putting these daft masks on. I started hiding it. I started trying be someone who I wasn't, until I found myself on a car park just about to take my own life 3 months down the line. Like I said, kept it to myself. I used to sit on the end couch watching telly, just ignoring people, ignoring my kids, ignoring my wife. And then 3 months down the line, I found myself on Beacon car park in Wigan with a box full of pills that had killed half the town and a bottle of gin. I was going to take my own life. Now, for some reason, I didn't, and I don't know what it was that stopped me, because I was in a very, very bad place but I was a total different person to what I am now. And if I try and go back to that person then, now, I can't get there, which is a really good sign. And I remember leaving the car park, not going through with taking my own life and being really cheesed off. I had a plan and now I didn't know what I was going to do. So I got back on the couch, I carried on snapping at my kids, snapping at my wife, ignoring them all. But the biggest thing that I did, I started talking to my friends a little bit. I started opening up a little bit.
Would these be your rugby friends or?
Both guys away from rugby and guys in rugby. I started talking to them. I started talking to my brothers a little bit, just opening up. They've seen a massive difference in my personality. I've gone from being Danny, the most laid-back guy who nothing gets to me really, to being really on edge and snappy and horrible and just being a real horrible person to live with. So I remember a week later, my mum, my dad, my wife, now and that, walked into the front room with the dining room chair and they made me speak about how I was feeling. So I finally did. I told them about the suicidal thoughts that I was having. I told them how I felt like I'd let them all down, how I'd lost everything because of me. And, you know, my injury wasn't my fault, but really my kids and my wife lost everything because of that injury, and that was down to me. So I remember I told them about everything, and me just getting that off my chest for the first time was an unbelievable feeling. It felt like a massive weight had gone straight away. It was like an unbelievable feeling. So we spent the next 3 or 4 hours talking and crying, and as you can see now, I'm an emotional guy. On a rugby field, I was horrible. I could hit people all day. I watched DIY SOS on a Wednesday night and cry all the way through it.
Me too.
Yeah. So I'm an emotional guy, but that doesn't bother me. If this goes out to 1 million people, it doesn't bother me. I am not bothered in the slightest. So we decided to go and see my GP, who was a good friend of mine, a guy called Dr. John Morgan from Pennygate, and I went seeing him, and I told him about how I was suffering. I went along with that, and he put me on some antidepressant medication, mirtazapine and citalopram, which really helped me. And I was on for about 3.5 years, these drugs, and I don't take anything now. I know medication doesn't suit everyone, but they really helped me. But the biggest thing that saved my life more than anything was talking.
Yeah.
And that suits me down to the ground because, like I said, I'm from Oldham and I'm tight, and talking doesn't cost anything. So I got talking to a counsellor from a clinic called Sporting Chance, which was set up by Tony Adams, the ex-footballer, and it was organised by RL Cares from the RFL, which is our governing body. And I used to see my counsellor twice a week for a month, a guy called Colin Bland. Then it went to once a week, then to once a fortnight, to once a month, once every 3 months, and now we just talk as friends on the phone. So you know, I suffered for about 18 months. I suffered with depression, but like I said, now I'm probably happier now than I've ever been doing the work that I do with State of Mind and the NHS and the after dinner stuff and stuff like that.
One of the things that I always see, and I think you're really good at it, and we've talked about the bad side of social media. I think whenever I see a comment, you're always make a comment, you'll say, oh, well done mate, enjoy it, or you're so positive.
Yeah.
And I think just a simple thing like that can really help someone, and you do seem so happy now, which is amazing. But it's a big step to talk about it. I mean, that almost, you know, they've all put you to one side, your family, your mum, your dad and your wife, and I can imagine the tears. And were they a little bit shocked at what they obviously knew you had a problem, but when you actually told them you know, the magnitude of it, they would have been obviously upset, but amazing that you did talk, because we know what the other circumstances would have been.
And it's I work with a guy called Phil Views, and he always says it, I can't remember the saying, but he says it's a permanent ending to a temporary problem.
I like that. And
it is, suicide is.
Yeah.
And the work that I do with State of Mind now, we talk about suicide all the time, and you shouldn't be scared of talking about suicide, because a lot of people have suicidal thoughts and might not have plans and stuff like that, but it's okay to ask people, are you feeling suicidal? You're not going to put that thought in their head. What you might do is give them that courage to open up and say, yes, I am, and that's when help and support is available. So
talking about State of Mind, you're a huge advocate, and you're also, trained now as a medical counsellor as well. Tell us about the charity, what you do. You do obviously some amazing work. A lot of it's based in rugby league, but you do a lot in education.
I'll just tell you how State of Mind was set up. So I lost Terry Newton to suicide. He was not only was he a teammate of mine, he was also one of my best friends as well, which was really tough to take. Now, Terry got banned from the sport for taking human growth hormone. He was the first athlete in the world for doing that. And you talk about identity. Terry lost his identity. He was no longer Terry Newton, the rugby league player. He was just Terry Newton. He couldn't come to terms with it. I remember watching him on Sky Sports doing a programme called Super League Supermen, being interviewed by Brian Carney. And I can remember watching that show, and you can watch it back now on YouTube. And I can see Terry all the way through that programme asking for help without him actually saying it.
In his speeches,
just what he was saying,
because you now know what to look for.
Because I understand it now, but because of the stigma in rugby league and mental health back then, no one recognised it. And he was saying, "I've let my teammates down, I've let the fans down, the club down, but most of all, I would let his wife and his daughters down." That to me is Terry waving that flag, saying, "Please, someone come and help me." But because no one recognised it, because of that stigma, and I know for a fact it's not depression, anxiety, stress, low mood what's killing people. The thing that's killing people is the stigma, because they think they can't come forward because they see it as a weakness. Because as a rugby league player, I was always taught, if I got injured on the field, you can't show that you're injured. You've got to get back in your defensive line. You keep moving forward, or else the opposition will target you. Unfortunately, Terry took that into everyday life, and he actually took his own life in September 2010. Sent massive shockwaves around the sport. Malcolm Ray and Ernie Bember, two of our three co-founders, wrote letters into the local rugby league paper to see if anything different can happen for players in a similar situation. Dr. Phil Cooper from the NHS read these two letters and decided to form a meeting between the three, and that's the reason why State of Mind was formed. And over the last 9 years since State of Mind was formed, we've spoke to over 100,000 people, whether we started off in Super League, Championship, Division 1, local community clubs, then we went into schools, colleges, universities, and now most of our work is done in alpha male type businesses, particularly police, fire service and construction, real alpha male type businesses where many particularly think they can't speak about how they're feeling. And we've been told at least 150 times that we've changed someone's mind on taking their own life, which for me is unbelievable, because if I can save one life in the next 30 years, then I believe I've done my job. But for it to be so many in such a short time is absolutely amazing. And Terry's death were really, really sad, but he doesn't realise that because of what he did, how many lives he's actually saving now, and how much that stigma is being broken down.
I remember at the time, and just the shock waves, like you said, it sent through the whole of the rugby league community, and it's just been a decade, hasn't it?
It's just been 10 years, yeah.
It's unbelievable that that's passed.
26.
But I'm sure he would be incredibly proud, but it's a shame that it's taken something like that. Yeah. It often does, doesn't it, to do that. But that's an amazing figure, 100,000 people who's been affected. It's
been amazing, and I love what I do because of Terry. I love keeping his name out there, and the work that we're doing is absolutely priceless. You can't put a figure on someone's life.
No.
So, I mean, there was a saying that every suicide cost the government or whatever 1.67 million, but I think that's a load of rubbish, because there's no price on any life.
No, absolutely not. I think obviously we've focused on sport, of course. So you did you come back from that injury? You did, didn't you? You did.
I did 18 months out, and I asked my surgeon if I could go back playing, and he said no. Then I asked another surgeon if I could go back playing, he said no. I asked another one, he said no.
You kept asking until someone said yeah?
No one said yes. Okay. I ended up signing a disclaimer at Widnes to say if anything happens, it's all down on me. And I ended up signing a contract at Widnes. So I went to Widnes in the Championship. Unfortunately, I couldn't train as hard as I wanted to or needed to be that level. So I was struggling for my fitness, and I only played about 8 games. And in my last ever game of rugby league, I got cannonball tackled, which is a tackle from the side in my standing leg, and I broke a bit of bone off the side of my kneecap. We call you femoral condyle. I broke that bone, and it was floating around in my knee. So I tried training the week after, and it kept catching in the joint. So I ended up, excuse me, needing an arthroscopy. I went in for
You're like the bionic man.
I know, it's unbelievable. Thumb fused and everything. So I ended up having me arthroscopy, which is a little clean out. You should be back playing in about 3 weeks. Unfortunately, caught sepsis in my leg. So I caught that at Oswestry, Robert Jones and Agneson Hospital. I didn't catch it there, but I caught it after that operation, so I'm not calling them. I ended up going to Wigan Hospital. I had 7 operations at Wigan Hospital, all flush out, clean outs. And then the surgeon at the time told me that he was going to either fuse my knee, which I remember my leg had been locked out straight, or they was going to chop my leg off. And I refused that. I said, there's no chance you're doing that. I'm going to go down and see a guy at Chelsea and Westminster in London who's operated on my brother in 2007. Now, Paul's first game back was in a World Club Challenge game from this knee operation. He scored 2 tries, kicked 2 goals, got a drop goal and got man of the match. So I thought, this guy can't be that bad, I'll go and see him. A guy called Andrew Williams. I went down to see Andrew, and he probably operated about 14, 15 times on me and given me my life back. But again, because of the infections that I'd had previously, after every operation, no matter how small or big, I was in hospital for 2 weeks on massive amounts of antibiotics, and I could feel myself. We'd just had our 3rd child, we just had Isla, me and Nat, and I could feel myself slipping back into a bit of a hole, but I knew what I needed to do. Because of that first depression, I knew that I needed to speak to someone, I needed to open up, I needed to talk about things. So Sporting Chance, again, Tony Adams got me talking to a guy called Nick Mercer, another counsellor, who used to come and see me every Monday, Wednesday, Friday down at Chelsea and Westminster, and he was absolutely brilliant. On a Monday we'd talk about what I was going through, everything that I was suffering with, the depression and stuff. The Wednesday we'd talk about what's been going on in the news and the weather, and on a Friday we'd just talk utter rubbish. But it was my rubbish. Yeah. So just getting things off my chest and not even knowing it helped me massively. So I knew what I did know is that because of that first bout of depression, I knew what to do the second time, and it saved my life.
It's really interesting, actually. So, you know, just because you know you can slip into that doesn't mean you're cured.
No.
You've got to constantly check in on yourself, make sure you keep those communication
100%,
channels open.
100%. I'm a mental health first aid facilitator, so I teach mental health first aid training, and we talk on that about life being a continuum, mental health being a continuum, so it's going up and down all the time. It's not always going in a upward trajectory. Sometimes it could be going down, but it's about how you deal with that. And it is a continuum. Your mental health is up and down all the time, but it's about using the right coping mechanism, doing the right things to make sure you try and keep it on an even keel.
So when you finally retired, how did you cope with that then transition of not being a rugby player? Was it you just knew you've give everything, you've give your body to the sport, haven't you? Could you cope with the transition quite well in the end, or did you have a void, or has this journey into mental health and you know your new approach give you a new lease of life? How quickly did you manage to do that?
100%. I didn't even officially retire from rugby league. I just fizzled out. I didn't even like players like James Graham's done today with St Helens. He's retiring at the end of the year. I didn't even do that. I didn't put any message on. I just ended up fizzling out of the game. But the work that I do in mental health now massively outweighs the stuff that I did in rugby league, and I enjoy my mental health work 100 times more than I enjoyed my rugby league, and I love my rugby league.
That's amazing.
I've done it from being 6-year-old, and mental health is just a passion of mine. I'm a level 2 counsellor. I've done my assist training in suicide. I've got different qualifications, and now, like I said, I'm a wellbeing and lifestyle coach for the NHS staff.
Amazing. So even though you've had such a, I can never use the word turbulent again after hearing your journey, you know, you have had 2 careers where you've been very passionate about what you do. So obviously bringing it all the way back to the beginning, and obviously WellFest and, you know, what we're here for. I think it's great that someone like you and people might have known your story or not, you know, not heard the whole of the story. I think it's just been so important that you've been so honest with everyone and, you know, kind of quashed some of those stereotypes and just gone through some of those barriers. it's a hard time at the moment, isn't it? Obviously, because we're in this global pandemic, and you know, again, we've used a lot of it as sport. But I know with Wigan Athletic, you know, I've been doing a bit of work to help them and their fans at the moment, obviously going through administration, a lot of the crowds not being able to go to games.
Yeah.
People are finding it hard at the moment, and, you know, we're getting some dark nights and winters creeping in. It's just so important to keep connected with people, isn't it? Because, you know, a lot of people are just not going out as much, and, you know, obviously
connecting is massive, and it's one of the 5 ways of well-being. And you know, life is tough at the moment, but the more you talk about it and the more you get things off your chest, then it won't be such a big deal. I know it's a big deal, but it's not as bad as it would be if you didn't speak about your issues. And for me, whenever I do my talks, whether I do interviews like this, I always try and leave it on 2 things. You know, if anybody that listens to this might be struggling and they might be having a few issues, whether it's be at home, work, school, if you can take 2 messages away from this, is that if you're feeling like things are getting on top of you, whether it's your home life, your social life, your work life, whether it's the pandemic, whether you suffer from anxiety, stress, depression, or some little things in life are building up and getting on top of you, please, please, please speak to someone about it. Because I know for a fact if I didn't speak to my mum and dad and my wife that day, 100% now I would not be here.
Yeah.
I'd have ruined my kid's life. I'd have ruined my parents' life. Isla wouldn't have even been born. And I can't imagine this world without them. I really can't. But the most important point, and the last point I want to get across, is that you don't have to be on a rugby field, football field and netball court to be part of a team. Every single person around you, whether it's a work colleague, a family member, a friend, a guy at the gym, the pub, the hairdressers, are all part of your team. And if you see a difference in them, the guy who's normally taking the mick and he's not doing that anymore, the guy who's normally life and soul of the party, he's being a bit quiet, he's spending a lot of time on their own, he's isolating himself. If you notice that difference, just ask him if he's okay. But the stock answer you will get every time you ask someone if they're okay is, yeah, I'm fine. But if you've seen that difference in him, don't take that as an answer. Tell him you've seen that difference in him. Then you might give them that bit of courage to open up, and that simple question then might just save their life.
It is giving that opportunity, isn't it? We've just got a couple of questions. You've been absolutely amazing. The first question is from Dave. He says, you've spoken so openly and publicly about your mental health journey. Has it taken time for you to feel confident doing that, and what's helped?
Well, I used to get very, very, very nervous. First 2 or 3 years working with State of Mind and talking to the teams and talking to the businesses and that, I used to dread it. I couldn't sleep for 2 days before a talk, and now I don't even think about it. I don't even think about coming here till half an hour before. I don't get nervous, because I know now that if you speak from your heart when you talk about your mental health journey, if you speak from your heart, then you can't go wrong. So I don't worry about things.
Amazing. I definitely took something from what you said, your previous comment, asking someone, are they okay? And that answer, they'd probably say that they are.
Yeah.
But again, to, you know, extend that and say, oh, well, I've noticed a little bit, you know, different.
Absolutely.
It just allows you to get that, you know,
and never,
communication, doesn't it?
Never answer closed questions where they can just say yes or no.
Yeah.
Make a conversation.
A conversation.
With you. But we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And you don't have to give them solutions. You try and make people work out their own solutions for their problems, and never be scared of silence in a conversation if you're talking about mental health, because that person who's struggling might just be thinking of something else that they need to say. But if you break that silence, they might not say it.
Yeah.
So don't be scared of silence.
Of silence. This next question from Rebecca, you've kind of half addressed it. She says she's worried about a friend who is struggling with her mental health. How can I help without offending her?
Well, just say you've seen a difference in the way she's acting. Yeah. Tell her how she's gone from being to how she is now. And just say that you're worried about her.
Yeah.
Just tell us what's going on. And if she says, oh, I'm okay, just say, listen, you're normally doing this, you're normally doing that, you're not doing it anymore. We've seen a big difference in you. I've not spoke to anyone about it, but I've seen this difference in you.
It's that
just
being
tell us what's going on. I really care about you.
Yeah,
and
okay,
people
not to be okay.
Sometimes people who suffer from depression feel like no one cares about them, when it's far from the truth.
Yeah.
You get into that frame of mind where, you know, I'd be better off without them. And I felt like I was a burden to Nat and the kids. I thought, well, if I'm not here, when I was on that car park and I was going to take my own life, I thought, you know, if I take my own life now, Nat would be better off. She could meet someone who'd give her a better life. Someone who'd bring my kids up better than I can, when that is far from the truth.
I was going to say, now sat there, that's so far from the truth, isn't it?
Yeah,
but at that moment, you just couldn't get yourself out of it. Last question, it's from Michael, and it's, do you miss playing rugby?
I do miss it. Yeah, try and keep involved.
I think you're better off not,
I know,
because we can't have anything else.
Yeah, but you know, I've had quite a lot of injuries and serious injuries, but it's made me who I am now. And if I had not gone through all my injuries and I've not gone through all the rejections and gone through all the depression, I wouldn't be sat here now doing what I do, and I absolutely love who I am.
Amazing. Well, if anyone wants to hear anything more about State of Mind Sport, amazing charity, there's lots of information now on Wigan Council website all about that. Also, if you've been affected by anything tonight, in tonight's Q&A, there's support by visiting www.shinealightonsuicide.org.uk. Danny, you have been absolutely amazing. I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight, because I'm going to think about so many messages that you've done. As a Wiganer and as an adopted Wiganer, I know we're so proud that Wigan Council are really, you know, trying to tackle the stigma about mental health and trying to support people through social care. WellFest is such different this year, of course, because you know, of the coronavirus, but really grateful that we found some creative ways of getting people involved. So the website is now live. Lots of information about the activities. It's going on all the way until Sunday. Some amazing things, some things about babies and baby massages and all sorts of things. I think I need to tune into those. But yeah, please have a look at the council website, www.wigan.gov.uk/WellFest, and follow Wigan Council on all the social media channels to find out more. Danny Sculthorpe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jenny. Been great.